going to take a quick break from coding really fast and go over what data types are. Now, within a program, as well as, outside of a program, a computer has to be able to store information. It's part of what makes it so useful. So, what we need to understand is what kind of information we're actually storing. For numbers, there are a couple of kinds of information we can actually store. Here I've got a couple of examples for you. A computer can store integer data, like this. That would be numbers like 0, 1, 2, 3, or, negative numbers as well. Whole numbers, basically, is what you have to keep in mind. Now, this is usually denoted by the data type int. Int is a bit of a smaller data type. There are actually larger data types you can have, like, say, if you were to have the data type long or long, those would be data types that would be able to hold a bit larger numbers, but usually int is very, very, very useful for just our everyday application. Now, if you're going to store decimal values, like, say, 1/2, which is 0.5, or a third, 0.333, or just any random decimal value, if you could go off to infinity if you wanted to, you would use the data type float or double. And what I mean when I say you would use the data type, int, float, or double, is that this is what we know it as. We know integers as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and decimals as 1/2 or 0.3 or something like that. But this is what the computer knows it as an int, or a float, or a double. The difference between a float and a double is that a double can be both larger and more accurate, but it takes up a little bit more memory. So if you can get away with a float, you can go ahead and try floats, but usually doubles will be the one that you want to use just because they're a little bit more accurate. Now, if you're going to be storing character data types, like, say, I want to remember what somebody typed, like if they typed an A or a B, or if it's a yes or no question, if they typed a Y or an N. Now you would use a character data type, which the computer would know as a char, a char, or car, however you want to pronounce it. Now this data type can hold capital letters, lowercase letters. It can also hold punctuations, and technically it can also hold numbers. But the thing is, it won't really be holding the numeric value of that number. It will just be holding the character of that number. It will be holding the fact that the character 9, the literal character 9 in this case, will have been chosen or selected for some reason, or any other number for that matter. Now, the final data type is something that you probably haven't dealt with a lot in your day-to-day life, or at least not on a mathematical level, and that is booleans. Now, what a boolean is, it's simple, but at the same time, it can actually get quite complicated. It is a number or a value that can only be one of two things, and that is false or true. So, think of a light switch as like a boolean value. It can be on or it can be off. You can't really have a midway value. You can't balance a light switch halfway between on and off and have it actually be something. It's either going to be on or it's going to be off. So that's what a boolean is. It's either false, which is usually a 0, it's known as a 0, or true, which is usually a 1, but could actually be anything that's just not a 0. So 2 is technically also true, 100 is true, 1/2 is true, anything that's not a 0 is true. So this data type is denoted by the term bool to the computer. So if this doesn't really make a lot of sense to you, what I mean when I say, int, float, double, car, boolean, I'm going to text, or, anything like that, it's going to make a little bit more sense when I actually use it in context. The compiler is going to recognize these keywords, like int or float or double. It's going to recognize those, and it's going to go into something else that I'm going to talk about later called variables. For now, in this lesson, just know that certain data types can hold certain information, and certain data types are better for holding things. Like, say, if I wanted to store my age in the computer, I would probably use an integer. Or if I wanted to, say, store my grade in school, I would probably use a floating point number. Use a float, like a decimal. Or if say I wanted to hold a certain letter or a series of letters that spelled someone's name, I would use characters. Or like say if I wanted to hold whether or not like a switch was on or off. For that I would use booleans. The point of this lesson is just to let you know that there are certain data types that are better for certain information.